And we're live. We are here with Omer Bartov. He is an Israeli-American historian and a leading scholar of the Holocaust and Genocide. He is Dean's Professor of Holocaust and Genocide Studies at Brown University, renowned for his work on the Nazi indoctrination of the Wehrmacht and the Holocaust in Eastern Europe. He also has a new book being released in April called Israel, What Went Wrong. Omer, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
So this is a long anticipated conversation for many of our viewers and community members. And it's a conversation I've also been looking forward to for quite some time. We cover a whole array of issues here pertaining to Israel-Palestine, but we've been focusing really heavily on what's happening in Gaza. And, you're somebody who is, I would say, one of the world-leading academics on genocide. So I kind of just want to get right into it. What is your analysis on what is happening in Gaza currently?
So I've been observing this since the beginning, and my views have shifted over time. I originally, in the early weeks, it appeared that the IDF was already carrying out war crimes, potentially crimes against humanity, simply because of the disproportionate number of civilians being killed and destruction. By spring, May of 2024, I began to think that the actions of the IDF were consistent with the statements that were made by many political and military leaders in Israel in the immediate wake of the October 7th massacre by Hamas, which appeared to have been genocidal. And what I could see by then was a pattern of operations. And that really culminated in the removal of over 1 million displaced Palestinians from the city of Rafah to the Mawasi area, that is to the beach area in southwestern Gaza. And then the destruction of Rafah, which is the southernmost city of Gaza on the border with Egypt. By then, at that point, I started looking back at reports really of what was going on in Gaza, and it appeared to me that there was a systematic attempt to destroy Gaza as such, that is, to make it unlivable for its population. And that destruction was not, as the IDF presented it, part of the goal of destroying Hamas and releasing the hostages, but rather of simply making it impossible for Palestinians to continue living in Gaza, in the entire Gaza Strip, and moving the population increasingly to the south with the hope that they could be gotten rid of altogether. That is, it appeared like ethnic cleansing that would become genocide because people had no place to go. And that meant that there was systematic destruction of universities, of schools, of mosques, of water plants, of power plants, of everything of museums, of everything that makes it possible for people to live in a space and also to maintain or reconstitute their cultural, political identity. Now I wrote about that in August 2024, and since then, there has been much more of this, of course. Vast numbers have been killed. We are nearing an estimate of 60,000, but other estimates speak about much higher figures of people killed, vast numbers of people wounded and maimed. And of course, because of the destruction of the entire medical infrastructure in Gaza, also large numbers of people who died indirectly, that is chronically ill people who needed treatment in the hospital who could not get it. Now, over time, this became, there were various phases to this. So in October of 2024, the IDF began an operation trying to remove all the population north of the Netzarim corridor, the northern third of Gaza, from that area under what was called the General's Plan. That's a plan by a retired general called, I'm blanking on his name now. Anyway, a retired general, which intended to simply empty the northern third of Gaza of its population. And that was proceeding apace with destruction of the Jabalia refugee camp there and other refugee camps and structures. It stopped in January because President Trump, for his own reasons, forced a ceasefire on Israel, not something that Netanyahu was too keen to do. That ceasefire lasted until March, and since March, this operation has resumed when the IDF unilaterally broke the ceasefire. And as you know, by now, the Israeli Minister of Defense, Israel Katz, proclaimed that told the IDF to prepare to create a humanitarian city in Rafah. Now, Rafah is destroyed. There's nothing there. So to build a sort of tent city on top of the ruins of Rafah, which would accommodate initially some 600,000 Palestinians to be moved back from the Mawasi area, from that beach area to that tent city, and then to enclose them there. That is, people would be able to come in, but would not be able to come out. The goal being, of course, to then force the removal outside of the Gaza Strip, the problem being that nobody is proclaiming that they would take them in. And that would increase to the entire population of Gaza. So what you're seeing is a concerted attempt with various aspects to it to perpetrate a genocide of the people of Gaza, that is to destroy that group as such in whole or in part. And it's proceeding apace with generally international impunity.
Thank you for that analysis. So it seems like a lot of the pushback that we hear on the label genocide almost comes from different definitions people have of this term. And I think for many Jews and Israelis, our frame of reference for genocide is the Holocaust, and we see that this is not quite the Holocaust. So it doesn't seem like a fitting term. And then we often hear the argument being made, well, if they wanted to really commit a genocide, then they would have killed much more people. What would you respond to that argument?
Well, so first of all, the only definition of genocide that matters under international law is the one provided by the UN in 1948 in the UN Convention on Genocide. And that provides a particular definition of the crime. And it's described as actions carried out with the intent to destroy a particular group, an ethnic, national, or religious group, in whole or in part, as such. So it's true that the UN reached or was able to come up with that definition and to make that into law in the wake of the Holocaust. So the mass crimes carried out in World War II certainly were an incentive for the international community that was convened within the newly established United Nations to accept a particular definition of genocide. Now, there were genocides before the genocide resolution, and there have been genocides since. And none of these genocides look like the Holocaust. The Holocaust was a particular type of genocide. It was a very large-scale genocide. It was probably the most extreme genocide of the modern era. And it had aspects of it that make it look like other genocides and aspects which were unique. We don't know of any other genocides, for instance, that had extermination camps, such as were created by the Nazis. But that doesn't mean that if a genocide doesn't look like the Holocaust, it's not a genocide. The way to determine whether something is a genocide is to go back to the UN definition and see whether it fits that definition or not. Now, that definition is not easy. That is, it's because it speaks about intent. Establishing intent is often not the easiest thing to do, because often regimes that carry out genocide don't want to say that they're doing that. They say they're taking care of the security needs. They say that there is a Fifth Legion. They say they've been invaded and so forth. They give other reasons for the need to destroy a particular group. The case of the IDF's operation in Gaza is peculiar in that Israeli leaders, right after October 7th, made statements that could easily be interpreted not only by international lawyers, but also by Israeli troops on the ground as genocidal. That is, as calling to destroy Gaza, to level it, to flatten it, saying that nobody was uninvolved. So partly the Israeli political leaders and military leaders already provided statements of intent, which often you don't find in such cases and are difficult to come by. But secondly, the other way of determining whether we are watching genocide is to see a pattern of operations, precisely because governments often don't want to provide written documents that say we are carrying out genocide. And so you look at a pattern of operations, and that's what I was talking about before. If you see a pattern of operations which appears to lead to an attempt to destroy a group as such, that can be an indication of genocide taking place. Now, genocide does not mean that you destroy all the people. You may wish to, but there's no need to destroy or to kill the entire group. The goal of genocide, as it is defined by the UN definition, is to destroy the group as such. That is, that the group will no longer exist. There may be members of the group who will. For instance, if 500,000 citizens or residents of Gaza are moved to Somalia and then disperse throughout Africa and lose their identity as Palestinians and cannot go back to Gaza and cannot reconstitute their identity, they may not have been killed, but their identity, their group as Palestinians will have been destroyed. The same is if you take children away from a group. So you leave all the grown-ups alive, but you take away all their children, and you take away the ability to reproduce, you can destroy a group without a great deal of bloodshed. So the question is whether your intent is to destroy the group as such. And there have been many statements of such intent being made in Israel, and you have seen that being carried out now in Gaza. That is, that people are living under such conditions that are likely to lead to the extinction as a group.
So this actually leads me quite nicely into my next question, really the concept of intent. So I had a similar process like yours at the beginning. It was very clear that there is an abundance of war crimes and crimes against humanity. When anybody pressed me on the label of genocide, I simply said, I don't claim to really fully understand how genocide's determined. I defer to the courts. The ICJ so far didn't determine it's a genocide. I don't pretend to know better than them. Upon looking into it a little bit deeper, I understood that it's very hard to prove genocide in the court of law, and you have many instances just in the 21st century of violence that academics will call genocide, but that is never proven in the court to be genocide. So is this an existing tension that really exists between how academics are talking about genocide and what is needed to prove it in the court, and what can be done about this? Because it's almost like we're at the point where as long as you maintain plausible deniability, it's not a genocide in the court of law. And that seems relatively easy to do in today's world.
So, this is a question that is often asked. It's true, it's a complex question. The the UN Convention on Genocide does two things. First of all, it makes it incumbent upon the signatory states that if they identify that genocide is about to take place, then they should act to try and prevent it. If it is taking place, they should act to try and stop it. And if it has already taken place, they should punish those who carried it out, right? And this is logical, right? In any legal system, you want to prevent crime, you want to stop it when it's happening, and you want to punish those who carried it out so as to make sure or to deter others from doing that again, right? So for one thing, this is because it's international law and because most of the states in the world today are signatories to the Genocide Convention, it's incumbent on them to act when they recognize it. So that's one thing. It's not up to simply courts or historians or other academics. It is a political issue, and states should respond to that. Now, the second thing is that the UN established in 1945, even before the Genocide Convention, an international court of justice. And that international, the ICJ, that International Court of Justice, one of its goals is to adjudicate cases between states. So if one state says that other state is carrying out genocide, then the ICJ needs to adjudicate that and to determine whether that is the case or not. And that can take a very long time, of course. The Genocide Convention also recommended the creation of an international criminal court, which would not be for states, but for individuals. Now, that took a long time to create, but eventually it was created decades later, and that's the ICC, the International Criminal Court. And that court, too, is charged with indictments of individuals suspected of various international crimes, including genocide, if they cannot be or will not be tried in their own national courts, right? That's when the ICC kicks in. Now, so you have a legal apparatus. It's, of course, political because these are created through international agreements. But if you wait for those international courts to determine whether a genocide is happening or not, because it's so difficult to collect all the documentation to make the case, the genocide may be over by then. And you might be able to punish those who carried it out, as we saw for the first time, of course, in Nuremberg in 1945. By then, the Nazi regime was gone. But some of the leaders were brought to justice in Nuremberg. But if you wait for that, you are, in a sense, giving license to genocide to be carried out. And therefore, it is incumbent on political leaders as well as other people, I think, such as myself, people who research genocide, are legal experts, to come up and say, we think what is happening is genocide, and we call upon our leaders, our political leaders, to act to stop it, and not to wait until an international court steps in, because it might be late by then.
And in your field of study, are there, from the research I did, it seems like there's pretty much consensus amongst academics of genocide that Israel is committing a genocide. But are there those who disagree with that claim, and what is their argument?
So let me say two things. First, yes, I think there is now a growing consensus among international lawyers who deal with these questions and genocide scholars that what we are seeing is genocide. And yes, there are some who disagree with that. I want to say that, first of all, it's important to understand that even if there are people who think that this is not a genocide and think what we're seeing is only war crimes and crimes against humanity, and there's a larger consensus on that, saying it's not genocide doesn't mean you have to stop what is going on. If you see a country, an army engaging in massive war crimes and crimes against humanity, which means that you're killing large numbers of civilians or you're displacing large numbers of civilians without having shown intent and without showing that the intent is directed at a particular group, but you're simply carrying out massive crimes against innocent civilians, whether it's genocide or not, these are international crimes, and that has to be stopped. So it's very important to understand that we don't need to wait for a complete consensus on this being genocide to act to stop what is already happening, and we can see it on a daily basis. Now, what are the arguments being made by those who resist describing this as genocide? Look, I mean, some of the arguments are perfectly reasonable. It is true. You can interpret the actions of the IDF according to some of its apologists. You can say Hamas is using the population as human shields. It's hiding in tunnels under densely populated areas. And therefore, the IDF has no choice but to destroy those areas if it wants to destroy Hamas. That's a very common argument. Another argument is the argument that you raised. If we wanted to carry out genocide, we would have killed even more. Of course, the numbers are rising by the day. So now, as I said, we're almost at 60,000 as a conservative estimate. But I've heard people say in Israel, well, we could have killed 1 million right away, or had we killed 300,000 on the first day, it would have been over, and so forth. So you can play a numbers game. Then there are those, and that's what I'm particularly worried about personally, and especially among Holocaust scholars and institutes that are dedicated to commemorating and researching the Holocaust, that have either been completely silent on what's going on in Gaza, have simply refused to say anything about it, despite the fact that they are based on the notion of never again. Never again what? Never again genocide, never again mass crimes, have said nothing about it. And some of them have accused genocide scholars, including people such as myself, and I've written a fair amount on the Holocaust itself, of being anti-Semitic, of being indiscriminate, or rather discriminating against Israel in accusing Israel of genocide. And that is part of a particular argument that you also hear in places like Germany, that you cannot blame the Jewish state of genocide because Israel was founded as the sort of answer to the Holocaust. It was founded in the wake of the Holocaust, the greatest genocide of the 20th century, and therefore to accuse it of genocide is to undermine its very claim to existence. So these are the kind of arguments that come up, and as you can see, they're not necessarily arguments of fact, they're also ideological. The one argument of fact, which is about Hamas fighting from within a civilian population, is problematic. A, because even when you have an enemy fighting within civilian populations, there is a rule of proportionality. And the IDF itself has recognized it over time. How many innocent civilians are you allowed to kill in order to kill 1 or 2 or 3 Hamas militants? When does that become a war crime? If you drop a bomb on 3 operatives in a tunnel who are under a school where there are hundreds of people who have been displaced to that school because the IDF told them to go there, and you kill 200 of them, is that proportionate, or is it a war crime? So even on that level, you can't go that far with that argument. The second problem is, of course, that Gaza was, before October 7th, one of the most densely populated areas in the world. And if you have a militant organization there, where is it going to operate from? It does not have tanks, it does not have artillery, it does not have an air force, it does not have a navy. It cannot come out and fight nobly against IDF soldiers because it does not have the same equipment and the same abilities. So it obviously fights like a guerrilla force. And guerrilla forces fight from within the population. You know, this is what Mao Zedong said. You know, the guerrilla has to be like a fish in the ocean. You always fight from within the population. So the way to confront that is not to try and destroy Hamas and thereby destroy Gaza as a whole completely, but to find a different way of dealing with this question. What are the roots of the growth of Hamas? Why has that organization taken over in Gaza? And what are the deep roots of the conflict between Israelis and Palestinians? Those cannot be addressed with bombs. And that's exactly what this government and the IDF is trying to do. And it cannot succeed because you cannot resolve such issues with bombs.
Omer, thank you for that response. And in general, just wealth of information. I think we're all a little bit more informed than we were 27 minutes ago. Because we're short on time, we initially agreed that we're going to do half of this session here on a live stream. The other half is going to take place on Discord for our community for a private Q&A. So if anybody viewing this wants to join, I just dropped the link in the chat. On Twitter, you could see this in my bio. We'll just do one final question before we hop over to Discord. But so you're working on a book right now. You want to maybe tell us what's written in the book and when we should expect it?
Sure. Let me just say that the general whose name I forgot is called Giora Island, and it would be interesting for any of you listeners to look him up because he's kind of the evil mind behind some of these plans to empty Gaza of its population. The book is, to put it very briefly, is an attempt to understand how, at least in my understanding, how Zionism was transformed from a movement of liberation, of emancipation of Jews in Europe, appeals to humanitarianism from the late 19th century, when there was growing violence and discrimination against Jews. So really a movement of liberation to one that became, especially after 1948, into a state ideology that increasingly became exclusionary, expansionist, violent, and in its current embodiment, quite racist. How did that happen? How did Zionism, which was a response to ethno-nationalism, and anti-Semitism, of course, internalize many of the very characteristics of the movements from which it wanted to liberate Jews and recreated that in Palestine, later in Israel. So that's what I try to understand through a variety of chapters, including one in which I speak about what I call the missing constitution, the fact that Israel never agreed on a constitution. And much of what we see now and what we saw in the months leading to October 7th, that is the so-called judicial overhaul by the government, by this very far-right government under Netanyahu, which was formed in late 2022, much of that was an attempt to reverse a previous 2 decades-long attempt to create a kind of constitution for Israel, which would have protected the rights both of Jews and of Palestinians. And in that sense, and this judicial coup is still ongoing in Israel, in that sense, you could say that the decision not to have a constitution in 1948 is one of the reasons that Zionism became a state ideology and a more and more extreme version of this kind of ethno-nationalism that we see today in Israel.
I'm looking forward to reading it when it comes out. So this will wrap up this portion here. What I think we're going to do, we're going to keep the stream going, but we're just going to move the conversation over to Discord. I think that's probably the best bet. Omer, you're going to see in private chat, I sent you a link. If you click on that link, you'll be connected to Discord. Hopefully the process is not too clunky. And I'm dropping another link for chat if anybody wants to join, if you want to interact with Omer directly, ask him questions. Obscurant, I see you have some questions and others have had questions, so Discord would be the place to do that. Just see that we can get this working.
Maybe I'll let you choose the questions.
Sure. Are you struggling with Discord?
I'm not struggling, but
let me see. I know the community is going to want to hear from you directly. They're actually watching this right now, so there's a group of them waiting for your arrival.
It's asking me to create an account. Am I in the right thing?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And it wants my date of birth. This is okay. Let's see.
I only thought of this last minute, but we should have done this earlier. So my apologies for.
Okay, I'll try to do that. And
once you do that, it should be pretty straightforward.
Okay.
Let's see.
Am I in the right thing?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it wants my date of birth. This is okay. Let's see.
All right, hold on. I'm getting feedback. Cool.
Yeah, I was hearing that too.
Yeah. I thought for a moment you joined. I'm like, oh, are you already in? And then I realized feedback.
Okay, let's see. Something is opening. Okay. Yeah,
I see that you joined. Great. And now hold on, you get I verify you, and then you'll see on the where's verified member? Okay, cool. You'll see on the left-hand side it says the stage.
Oh yeah, okay.
So now click on the stage, and then you'll be there, and then from there we could pull you on stage. And I'm gonna remove you here, and we're gonna share the screen from Discord. Cool. You, and then you'll see on the. Okay, Omar. Let's. Where's verified member? Okay, cool. You'll see on the left-hand side it says the stage. Omar, let's remove this now.
Okay.
So now click on the stage, and then you'll be there, and then from there we can put you on stage. And I'm gonna remove you here, and we're gonna share the screen from Discord. Can you hear me? There we go. Thank you, Omar. Great. We have Omer here. I don't see him. Do we see Omer in the chat? Did he not make it in? Damn. Hold on 1 second. Omer, were you able to click stage?
No, it's grayed out.
It's grayed out.
Yeah, and now I have the stage, join stage, but and it says that you and I are speaking, but I can't. It doesn't. It isn't working.
Hold on, let's try one more thing. We're building our own platform, which will be much simpler than this, but this is what we have for now. Omar, can you send me a link? I'm saying Omar, not Omer. It's
okay.
Yeah. Omar, can you send me a link to? There we go. Thank you. Okay, let's see if this works. This should bring you directly into the stage. And then I'd send you another link in private chat.
Where do I get the link? on the previous thing. Oh,
Yeah,
this one.
yeah,
Okay.
here in private chat, yeah.
Okay, let's see. Accept invite. Okay. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to see.
What happens when you click the link? Are you?
I went back to this head-on, and I'm looking at exactly the same thing as before. I now have two of them open, but it's the same.
So you're
I'm going to click.
You're not able to click the link.
I click the link. I'm in head-on. It says here Adar is currently speaking. Then it has a little thing, join stage, but when I click on that, nothing happens. Oh, now I see the people who are on the stage, I think. I see a list on the right.
Yeah, Omar, do you maybe know what's going on? Because he has the verified role, so he should be able to join, no? Omar, yeah. Hold on one second. We're troubleshooting this. Omar, do you know why he's not able to join the room? I don't know if you're speaking, Omar, but I'm not hearing you at all. Okay, I mean, if we don't figure this out in 2 minutes, we'll just need to continue the stream. Yeah, Serge, he's clicking on stage. He says he can. Are you actually clicking, like, stage is a button that you could click?
He needs to go to, is he the computer and desktop?
Yeah, he's on his computer.
So he needs to go into this, click in the section that says stage. She's on the left.
Yeah, so Omer, are you actually clicking on the stage with your cursor?
You are speaking to me now?
Yeah. I'm speaking to you, Omer.
On the left, I see head-on speaking to Israeli genocide scholar, and then there's listen in. There's a green button.
So click
to scroll down. He's looking at the event.
Wait. So click. Omar, we got it. So click listen in.
Yeah, I've done it before, but it doesn't do anything. That's what I'm saying.
Oh,
I click on it, and nothing happens.
Nothing's happening.
Well, what it says is that, I mean, I see that you're speaking with me, and I see, I guess, icons for you and potentially for me.
That's fine. You know what? That's fine. We're going to keep it going here, but you can hear when people are speaking through my computer, right? You heard other people.
I heard Omar. Yeah.
Okay, great. So we're just going to keep the session going.
Okay.
I love Discord, but I also hate it at the same time. Who wants to ask first? Omar, did you have a question you wanted to ask?
No, not right now.
Okay, so
there's Andrew. Andrew is here.
Andrew, we're going to give it to you then.
Thank you. Do you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Hi, Omer. My name is Andrew. Thank you so much for your time and your insight. So my question is, you've mentioned, right, Mao and the fact that Hamas is a kind of insurgency, a well-established insurgency, right, operating in a densely populated area. And you said that the only kind of viable solution to that would be the political one. So do you, as a scholar, right, view counterinsurgency, any counterinsurgency efforts against such an opponent, kind of such an insurgency, as genocidal in nature, basically, right? And what is the view of the scholarship, right, of the wider kind of community of people who think about counterinsurgency and genocide, right, in that way?
That's a good question. Counterinsurgency. I think the French came up with this idea in their own colonial wars. Is every counterinsurgency genocidal? I think that that's to be determined. I'm not sure that every counterinsurgency is genocidal. I think that in the conflict between Israel, the state of Israel, and Palestinians, it has its own aspects which are not only those of counterinsurgency. And that's actually the case in many other colonial wars, but the one between Israel and Palestinians is not simply a colonial war, it's also a national conflict. So I don't think that every counterinsurgency is necessarily genocidal. I don't think that most genocide scholars would say that either. I would say that it's very hard to think of counterinsurgencies that worked. The major cases of counterinsurgency did not end up well for those who were trying to put down insurgencies, because, as I was saying about the case of Israel and the Palestinians, and I'm not a big supporter of Hamas. I think that Hamas is a murderous organization, and it would be great for the Palestinians if they had a different one. But the only way to deal with these situations is political and not military. And military action usually in counterinsurgencies leads to vast civilian losses, and often, and I invoked Mao, but you can think of many other cases, often only brings in more and more people to the counterinsurgency. That's what happened in Indochina, that's what happened in Algeria, that's what happened later on in the Vietnam War, and so forth. You need a political solution. And in those cases, it's usually the more powerful entity that must accept the idea that it needs to make concessions, that it cannot operate simply from a position of power. Now, yes, it can become genocidal. Very, very often what you see are massacres. Often there would be mutual massacres. There would be massacres also by insurgents. But for me, the most important point here is that you cannot resolve such conflicts militarily. They have to be resolved politically. And I'll add to that if you think about it as a war, and I've said already that what's going on in Gaza now is not a war. The term war is just a cover-up for what is actually going on there, which is ethnic cleansing and genocide. But in a war, if you don't have political goals to that war, then it will become a war of all against all. It will become what Clausewitz called an absolute war. And it often has a potential of becoming a genocidal war. So again, even if you're speaking about war, not just about insurgency, counterinsurgency, without politics, when you believe that you can resolve things only with bombs, you are heading toward genocide.
Thank you. And Andrew, we're not going to have time for follow-up just because there's many people that want to ask questions, and Omer has a hard stop in 15. But thanks for the question. Altoids, we're going to bring you up. Altoids, all you.
Can you hear me?
Yep, all you.
All right. So quick question. So I know you, your background is of a communist. You were born in Kibbutz, and I imagine you have some leftist background. And in 2023, in August, you wrote a letter. You just signed a letter claiming that Israel is committing apartheid in Israel proper, something of the sort, or that it operates a regime of apartheid. So, and obviously the way you speak about the reform, the judicial reform, and about the parties that form the coalition in the Israeli government, it all ties together. That obviously you seem to have a very big bias against Israel and against the Jewish people for some sort, the traditional Jewish people. So do you think this affects your view of this war and this conflict at all. And it seems like you're famous amongst pro-Palestinians, because I personally didn't know you, and I had to do some research. But you seem to be famous in the pro-Palestine side, because you seem to be the pro-Palestine expert. So can you please tell, is this affecting in any way, in your opinion, your decision on whether or not it's a genocide?
So, yeah, thanks for that's the short question. So I'm not a communist. I was never a communist. I was born in kibbutz En HaChoresh. I left the kibbutz when I was 18 months old. My political opinions were not highly developed at that time. And I grew up in Tel Aviv. I was educated in Israel. I served for 4 years in the IDF. I ended my service as a company commander, and I lived until my mid-30s in Israel. I'm not an anti-Israeli, and I'm actually Jewish, and I'm not anti-Semitic. As I was saying before, what I believe is that what Israel is doing now is a series of war crimes that can be described also as genocide, that it is doing it under the leadership of a far-right, extreme far-right government, which is speaking openly. People like Ben Gvir and Smotrich speaking openly of, so to speak, encouraging Palestinians to leave, who are carrying out pogroms in the West Bank as we speak, and whose goal is to have all of the land from the Jordan to the sea under Jewish supremacy, with as few Palestinians as possible. That's a position that I think is supported by possibly up to 30% of the population in Israel. But these people happen to be in government now, and they're pushing very strongly to it. And as they're doing it, two things are happening. First of all, Israeli democracy is being eroded by the day, and there is a pretty good chance that by the end of this term of this government, Israel will be shifting to become an authoritarian, illiberal state, more on the model of Turkey and Hungary. And secondly, there is growing violence against Palestinians, not only in Gaza, but in the West Bank, and even within Israel itself, that is, Palestinians who are Israeli citizens, and that the apartheid regime that has been established in the West Bank, which is what I wrote about, I did not say it was the whole state of Israel, that the apartheid regime in the West Bank, where there are two legal systems, one for Jews, for Jewish settlers who are extraterritorial Israeli citizens, and one for Palestinians who have no right, who live under military rule, that apartheid regime will expand to reach also into Israel itself. There are attempts to do that right now against Palestinian citizens of Israel, and that will have an effect also on Jewish citizens of Israel who do not conform to this ideology that is being now disseminated by the far right in Israel. I hope that Israel, either from within, although I don't see enough energy, enough people in Israel to bring about a change from within, but either from within or from without, will be saved from these powers in Israel itself that are leading it down a very dark path, a path of becoming a full-blown apartheid state, a violent, policed, authoritarian state. And historically, we know that such states don't tend to last very long. And you can look at South Africa as an example, to save it from that and to bring it to a better path, which would be a way to find a way to share the space where 7 million Palestinians and 7 million Jews live. Most of them are not going away. to help Israel find a path there, whether from within or possibly, hopefully, through American and European leadership that will help Israel get on the right track of history and not go to the dark side.
Thank you. We are now going to bring on Serge. And guys, I don't think we're going to have time for everybody, so we'll just need to hopefully schedule a round two. Serge, floor is yours.
Hello, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, great. My question is, I read your kind of scathing review of Finkelstein's book, The Holocaust Industry. And I was just wondering if your views on Finkelstein have changed, or whether or not, and whether he's like a good voice for speaking about the issue with Israel and Palestine.
Sure. Thanks for reading that. That was what, 20 years ago, I think, something like that. Yes, I mean, my views have definitely evolved, maybe more than Finkelstein's. I think the book at the time was an attack on what he perceived as the Holocaust industry and the Jewish lobby in the United States. I thought at the time, I still think today, that at the time he might have been exaggerating in his perception of that. I must say that his views on Israel-Palestine that I've started following more recently, I tend to agree with him much more than I might have 10, 15 years ago. I've certainly become much more critical than I used to be of Israeli policies, both because they have become much more extreme and also because I have changed my views. And so I think that today there's much more of an overlap. I haven't spoken with him for God knows how long, but I think that today there's much more of an overlap between us on these two issues. First, on Israel-Palestine, and secondly, on the so-called Jewish lobby. This is an issue, the latter is a really problematic issue, because on the one hand, clearly Israel and the Jewish establishment in the United States have a huge effect on American policy. I think there's no doubt about it. Not least the arms industry, technology, and so forth. But on the other hand, I worry that what Israel is doing and the attempt to silence protests and speech in the United States about Israel, criticism of Israel by alleging that it's anti-Semitic, is actually going to give rise to anti-Semitism. And there is anti-Semitism in the United States. I'm sure that Norman agrees with me. And it is on the rise. And the actions of Israel and those who are trying to cover up for Israel are going to make it worse. And one needs to, and you know, one of the sort of core ideas of anti-Semitism is that the Jews are trying to take over the world, that they're pulling all the strings. And so when you speak about a Jewish lobby as a kind of, whatever we would call it, a deep state, a conspiracy, then you may end up again on the wrong side. And so that's what I think we need to balance, these two elements. I think that a growing opinion within the Jewish community in the United States and elsewhere, as generally among young people, is much, much more critical of Israel today. Not that these are people who want to destroy the Jewish state, but want to save it from its own evil spirits that have taken over it now.
Thank you. We're now going to bring up Noam. We're bringing you up. Noam, I saw that you had multiple questions, but we'll only be able to get to one, so pick yours. And Serge, thank you for the question. Noam, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Omer, you said that the UN definition, the 1948 Convention definition, is what matters for genocide. But first of all, it only recognizes 3 genocides, and the Holocaust isn't one of them. And I want to ask, why is what is happening in Gaza a genocide by that definition, and not what happened to Jews or Israelis, a genocide, not on October 7th, not on the people needing to evacuate the northern border, under the uninhabitable interpretation of the definition, or anything else in the history in the last 2 centuries?
So I think I can break your question to 2 parts. One on the UN definition. The UN definition is the only one that matters in international law. I mean, people can have their own definition of genocide. There are many scholars who have various definitions of genocide, and they're fine. They write whole books on that. But in international law, there is one definition, and that's the one. That definition, the Holocaust was not defined as a genocide because the Holocaust happened before that definition came up, was created. But as you probably know, the man who pushed for a genocide convention, for a UN genocide convention, and who defined it in a book that he published in 1944, was Raphael Lemkin, who was a Jew from Poland, who escaped from Poland, ended up in America, whose entire family was murdered in the Holocaust. And therefore, the Holocaust certainly played a major role in pushing for, and then in the UN accepting the Genocide Convention. As for the second part, why is, say, the attacks by Hezbollah on the Galilee, on Jewish communities, and actually also Arab communities that were hit by Hezbollah rockets, why is that not a genocide? Because you would have to show that the goal of Hezbollah was to destroy the state of Israel, and that it had an ability to do so. And that was not the goal. Hezbollah has never stated that. And it certainly did not have the ability to do so. With Hamas, it becomes a little bit more problematic because, as you may know, Hamas, the founding document of Hamas from 1987 or 88 is a really bizarre document. It has major anti-Semitic parts of it lifted. It appears from the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, which is a conspiracy theory from the beginning of the 20th century, and could be defined as genocidal. And if you want to link the attack by Hamas on October 7th, which was clearly a war crime and a crime against humanity, to that document, you could potentially argue that it was a genocidal attack. But even if you do, that does not give you the license to carry out genocide yourself. And what Israel is being engaged in right now is a genocidal operation in Gaza. And I think the kind of whataboutism that everyone is so interested in playing right now, to me, is not particularly interesting. We have to look at things as what they are. And if we can identify, according to the UN definition, that a certain state or organization is carrying out genocide, we have to call it out.
Thank you. And with that, unfortunately, we will have to wrap this up. Omer has, I had to ask him very nicely just to get a full hour. So
yeah, I gotta go. I'm really sorry. I apologize.
Omer, toda rabba, shukran ketir, and thank you very much.
Afwan.
This was a real pleasure, and we'd love to have you back if you're available, because as you can see, the questions are coming in, and there's immense curiosity here. So
great, we'll do it again. All right, thank you. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Great. Okay, I guess we'll keep the stream going for another 15-20 minutes, and then we'll wrap up the stream and do it entirely on Discord. But I thought that was great. So for those who don't know, tomorrow, same time, 7:30 p.m. Jerusalem time, I'm going to be speaking to Dr. Brian L. Cox, who is a researcher and professor of genocide studies, who has, I would say, the complete opposite take to Omer. He believes not only is it not genocide, but that Israel, for the most part, is abiding by international law. So we're going to have a very different perspective tomorrow, and I think it'll probably be a little bit closer in nature to a debate than this was. Although, as you all know, the debates on this channel are good faith and not with the intention to debunk or destroy, but just to give proper challenge on disagreements. So that will be tomorrow. And he actually, so this is a point that I've seen you bring up a lot, and he actually acknowledged that you can call October 7th a genocide. So you heard it from him. Does anyone with their hand raised still want to hop on stage? This is just going to be a free flow now, so anybody can raise their hand. And I'm inviting everybody on stage who wants to. Cool.
Hello.
Let the party begin.
So Adar, he didn't really recognize that. He said that I could, so it's less definite than what is happening in Gaza, but it's more definite than what is happening in Gaza.
I don't know about that. No.
So Noam, if I may counter that, Noam, the way these things work is somebody puts forth the claim in the public square, and then the public argues about it. Somebody else who's a public persona jumps in and debates them, opines in various ways. So this is just how these things work. It's not colloquially discussed as a genocide because I don't know why. I think bad branding on Israel's behalf, but he was being intellectually honest. He was saying, look, Hamas quotes the elders of Zion. I forgot about that, but Hamas quotes genocidal talk. If he was a little bit more, I think, intellectually honest, he would also have pointed out that Hamas quotes the Quran in saying that it will fight the Jews, but maybe he's a little bit biased. I don't know. But it's a step in the right direction, I think. It's the right way to talk about these things in an honest way. Maybe he hadn't really thought about it before you asked it to him. That's possible too. So I think give him more credit than you're giving him.
Well, in a public way, yes, but not when he's saying it in a scholarly or a legal way. That's not what you wouldn't argue for public opinion in a court of law when you just argue something, and that's the whole thing he was talking about.
And he's
right?
Yeah, but he's also a public persona. He's no. I would actually argue no. I think he's a public persona. He's arguing as a public person. He's making an appearance. He's arguing with you, I should say, as a public person, or agreeing with you, in my opinion, as a public person. But he's making an appearance on a podcast. He's not writing his paper. He's not testifying in court or anything like that. So and again, he might have never even heard it discussed in that way. And I think that that's honestly a failure on Israel's part, not a failure. We're individuals. That I talk about it as it's a genocide. I think I was the only I hadn't heard anybody talk about it until maybe a few months ago. You also said that you thought it was a genocide, which is the only reason that I think that you should be included in this this community, because I see it as a really relevant point to make. Because you can cite these things. Anyway, sorry.
I think that
the title says scholar, not publicist. So I treated him as a scholar, not as a public figure.
You could be both.
You can be both. Well, I was going to say that.
He's a scholar.
No, but what I'm saying is that but some of the defenses that I hear from people who want to be genocide deniers are that Israel has 2 million Palestinian citizens, that Israel has occupation of the West Bank. And for me, for example, Altoid, I'm not going to define you, so you don't define me, okay, or my people, okay? So just keep it civil.
Well, there are my people too.
Their point, yeah, oh yeah.
Okay, guys.
That was another
Okay, guys. Back.
So the point is that what we do have is it possible that there's a genocide happening in one place and not in the other? Like I, for example, would not define what's happening in the West Bank as a genocide. I don't think I can say ethnic cleansing. There's definitely ethnic cleansing going on in parts of the West Bank. There's definitely ethnic cleansing that took place in the 40s and even in, following the 1967 war. We can say that there's types of ethnic cleansing that are going on in certain areas like in the Negev. But why I won't say October 7th was a genocide, because if you're going to take the position that October 7th, the Hamas attacks was a genocide, then every act of war is going to be considered a genocide. Now, had Hamas gone in and destroyed the means of life, the fields, the hospital systems, the school systems, and basically made it uninhabitable, then I would say to you that, yes, that was a genocide. I don't have to say it.
Can I suggest?
But the
It's
fact
still
that
uninhabitable till this day.
Can I interject?
Yeah, you're using a personal definition. You're using a personal definition of genocide and not a scholarly one at that point, honestly.
I think it's fair to say that October 7th was an act of genocide, but it's not part of a campaign of genocide. Is that a definition that everybody can work with?
I don't.
No, I would say
what I'm saying is taking a position
of genocide.
What I'm saying is a person saying, a person taking a speech, like saying, for example, quoting the elders of Zion, saying genocidal stuff does not mean that it's a genocide. We are judging genocide by the actual acts and crimes that were committed. And in Gaza, we have clear evidence of things that were done specifically to destroy life and the means of life. And if you want to make that case on October 7th, I'm open to hear that. Let's have a trial.
Clear evidence of that on October 7th.
Your head, absolutely. So what I'm trying to say is,
just very quickly, I think with October 7th, there wasn't ever a chance that Hamas was ever going to destroy Israel based on that attack. But I think I didn't say it was an excuse. That doesn't mean it's all right. I'm stating a fact. Hamas was never going to destroy Israel. That doesn't therefore mean I think everything Hamas did was all right. But what I was trying to say was that the fact that they mentioned they quote the elders of Zion and have some anti-Semitic statements in their charter can be interpreted as intent, which is where you bring the genocide in. I think that's why he mentioned their charter, because that is where you have to go to try and determine their intent. With Israel, on the other hand, we actually have statements, contemporaneous statements from people currently in government making genocidal statements, which is slightly different. But for Hamas to discern their genocidal intent, you go to their charter. I think that's why I mentioned it. Maybe I'm wrong.
I mean, I don't think intent is quoted in the actual definition, literally.
Oh no, intent is part of it. If you cannot prove intent, you cannot prove it's genocide. So even if they do things which appear to be genocide, if you cannot prove intent, you cannot prove genocide. That has been a difficulty with a lot of other genocides, because people are usually more guarded about making genocidal statements. So in the past, that has been the difficulty. In this one, it's almost the other way around, where we have the genocidal statements, and it's a question of trying to determine whether they actually interpret to a genuine genocidal intent.
It's also destroy in part. It doesn't have to be destroy all of Israel. They did destroy part of Israel. And yes, so every war would be a genocide. And actually every ethnic cleansing is a genocide, according to...
If you can find the people running that war ethnic cleansing...
Which communities that were attacked by Hamas are no longer inhabitable? Which communities are no longer in existence? I mean,
all the kibbutzes and
so for example, people can't return there.
I don't think that matters. Even if they weren't successful, it doesn't mean that it wasn't a genocide. I don't think that's a good argument.
Yeah, but sir, genocide has to be intent as well as the crime itself. Okay.
No, it has to be intent. That's not the article says.
No one is trying to say that genocide was committed, but at the same time, I don't see anyone being. Life can continue in those kibbutz. People can go back. People can rebuild.
I'm sorry.
You have 800 people that can't continue their lives there because they were dead.
Guys, how about this? What?
Saying that people can still live there is the same tier of argument as saying it's not genocide in Gaza because there's still Gazans left.
So how about this? Instead of just getting stuck on a debate on terminology, okay, October 7th was a genocide of the scale of killing 1,200 people, and then Israel responded with a genocide of
in one day.
In one day, and then Israel responded with a genocide of the scale of nearly 100,000 people and going.
Yeah, neither.
Okay, I'm cool with that.
The
Cool with
way
that.
I'll put it,
Why get caught in the weeds? Cool.
Neither.
Like,
Neither
Well,
were genocides.
the way I'll put it is basically October 7th was a genocidal act, a single genocidal act, whereas the war in Gaza is a campaign of genocide. Only one of them seems to have any sort of hope of being successful, but that is only by the by. I think an act of genocide versus a campaign of genocide. That's the distinction I'd make.
Yeah.
Do you know
Yeah.
why I also disagree with that? The reason I would say that what Hamas did is not a genocide by any means is for just one thing. What Israel is doing right now, because even Omer Bartov, he's explicitly stated it. He said, for this to be just a war crime, there needs to be a war of goal. And you can say that Hamas's goal is to have Palestinian freedom, to establish rights back to the Palestinians, to have some sort of a Palestinian state. Well, the Israelis exist. No Hamas member, or not. I wouldn't say no Hamas member, but I would say that in reality, if you think about the Hamas political office or the idea and its leaders, or even if you bring them to the negotiation table and you start asking them, is it okay for you to have just a Palestinian state and an Israeli state, a two-state solution, or do you actually just want 100% explicitly to end the whole Israeli state and kill them? They will say, no, let's achieve peace, let's ensure there's a right, and you've said this multiple times in the ceasefire deals.
I actually agree with that. Personally, if we're talking about...
They also, I agree, Omar, they said that, Omar, they said that on October 6th. They said all that on October 6th.
Let me continue. But what Israel is doing is that even after it literally turned Gaza into a wasteland, it still wants to displace them. It still wants to cut them. They have the option of a Hamas disarmament. They had the option of trying to at least reach their I don't know, hidden war goal or whatever war goal that they had but don't currently have. They had the option of achieving at least 90% of it, but they refused. And do you know why they refused? Because it is a genocide. But I think Hamas, if you gave Hamas even 60 or 70% of their war goals, they would stop. They would accept Israelis and Israel as a second state, as a neighbor, and then if they don't do that, then definitely Hamas is a genocidal military faction. It was a genocide all along.
Omar, just to make my position clear, just very quickly, just to make my position clear, right? I don't think necessarily that Hamas's primary goal is to destroy Israel. I do agree that their primary goal is to win rights for their people, right? They have chosen to do so using an armed struggle, and in doing so, they have chosen to target civilians. Personally, I can never support anyone who targets civilians, whichever side they're on, so I cannot support that particular tactic. But at the same time, I acknowledge that Hamas's goal is to win freedom for their people, or to win autonomy for their people, shall we say. I have seen several times where they've actually tried to engage on the two-state solution, and they've basically been dismissed as untrustworthy. But then people would then turn around and say, oh, Hamas has never agreed to the two-state solution. I agree with you. If they were given the opportunity, if they were given a choice between a two-state solution and destroying Israel, I personally believe they choose the two-state solution. But I don't think that changes the nature of the act on October 7th. Whatever you want to think about Israel-Palestine.
No, I agree with you.
That particular act, at best, it was a war crime.
Can we get some counter?
The statement that you said that we can never get behind civilian casualties and death.
No, I said targeting civilians.
I'm saying I agree with this statement unconditionally. Like whether it's the pro-Palestinian side, the Palestinian for freedom, the Palestinian for resistance, and same on the Israeli side. We can never agree with you that you can never, we can never agree or get behind something that actually did purposefully target civilians. 100%.
100%. I mean, for me personally, the event that actually, I'll say that hardened my opinion against Israel was in 2003, a British activist about my age, he was in his 20s at the time, he was shot in the head by a sniper. And it was the same old stand. Oh, he was in the middle of a firefight, or he was rushing towards. So the same excuses that they still give today, right? And they closed the investigation and said nothing to see here. The British government insisted and insisted and insisted. And in the end, when they found out what happened, he was actually shot in the head by an award-winning sniper from a watchtower. And the whole thing about him, he was basically trying to help some kids. There was a firefight. They were trying to help some kids get out of the line of fire, and they shot him in the head. Tried to lie about it. They got found out. That was the event that kind of turned me, because I knew for a fact that if he was Palestinian, nobody would have ever found out about it. That would have been the end of it. And I knew that was not the only time it was happening, basically. So, well, does anybody want to tell me that maybe it was just a one-off and he was the only person that was killed by accident? I don't believe that.
Okay, so can we get some opposing views to you guys just being like, Hamas is totally a good intention actor?
Nobody said Hamas is good intention. Nobody said Hamas is good intention.
Well, you guys were saying, oh, I think Hamas would take a two-state. Oh, they're so reasonable.
If they had that choice, I do believe that, yes.
You can.
I don't believe that.
Wait, guys.
Hold on, buddy.
Yeah, not time.
You're talking over me a lot. You had your whole thing. You can you can say all of this nice stuff about Hamas, and you can find good intentioned or seemingly good intentioned West-facing spokespeople from it. But then you can also just find these people who are like, yeah, we're going to do October 7th again and then again and again. And it just rings as really insincere.
Because I can find Israelis that say all these things.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you. I couldn't hear you because I was still talking.
Just very quickly.
It just rings
wait, no.
To that same standard.
Wait, Nomad. Give Natan the floor, and then you can respond.
Okay,
Cool.
I apologize if I interrupted you. Sorry.
That you did, yes.
I apologize.
So, yes, I see. Thank you. So all that to say, it just seems as like, oh, guys, let's be honest. It rings as the exact same thing that I see from Israelis all the time. Oh, guys, no. Israel is a modern army. They're not trying to kill innocent civilians. It's just collateral damage. It's the same thing. You guys are just doing apologetics for your side, and it's really disappointing. What I would like to see more is what I do. Big ups to me, where I say, look, this is a genocide in Gaza. This is apartheid in the West Bank. This is, the right of return is key for this conflict to end, and so on and so forth. But as well, the Palestinian side has its own issues with genocide and apartheid and aspirations for both. So all of this, Hamas is just such a good thing. It rings really insincere and one-sided, and that's all I want to say.
May I respond now?
All you, Nomad.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, all you.
Right. So I think you might have misunderstood. I can only explain my position. I think you might have misunderstood where I'm coming from. I am not under no illusions that Hamas is some sort of utopian organization. They are terrorists. They are killers. They target civilians. I can never support that. That does not, just because I'm saying I think they would choose a two-state solution over destroying Israel outright, doesn't mean I think that that all of a sudden they're going to be like all flowers and sunlight and they're some sort of utopian organization. They are not. They are terrorists. I'm under no illusion about what they are. That, again, doesn't mean I have to think, Hamas bad, so anything negative about Hamas that anyone says, I must believe it and accept it. I am just saying that I believe, and I have reasons for this belief, that if they were given the choice between a two-state solution or destroying Israel outright, and they could only have one or the other and not both, I think they would choose a state before they would choose destruction of Israel outright and killing all the Jewish people. That is just what I believe, I guess. Doesn't mean I think that they're all teddy bears.
Can I reply to what Natan said? Because I think that there's two things going on. I think that in Palestinian society, there's very strong sentiments about Hamas. And for example, there's people who are politically don't agree with Hamas and what Hamas has done. I do agree with Genome. I think that when it comes to pragmatic solutions, I do think that Hamas is more open. I don't think they're ideologically saying that we're going to fight to the death and till the death of Israel. I honestly do believe that. And I'm saying this as a person who's very critical of Hamas, who has a history of being critical of Hamas. The issue that I have with Natan is that I agree with him that in Palestinian societies, we do have extreme elements, and I would say even more extreme than Hamas. We do have these extreme elements. We do have these extreme attitudes. But the issue that I have is that it seems to me that people like, I don't want to say like Natan, but people who have to bring these up like Natan, the solution for Hamas is to destroy them, to export them, to expel them, to eliminate them, to arrest them, to to send them to Qatar, to send them to Iran or wherever. And I'm saying that I can recognize that this is a problem, that radicalization and extremism is a problem in the Palestinian area. And I would even go so far to say that they are an obstacle to us to move forward, but they're also a natural reaction to, decades of neglect, decades of being ignored, decades of being subjected to oppression. But at the same time, I don't know if I would find that motivation against such extremism on the Jewish side. We have Jewish or agencies right now in power that support things worse than Hamas. We have people like the Ben Gavirs and the Smotrich and the Ariyad and these people who are just as dangerous, and I would say more so dangerous because they are in positions of power. Who's arming these settlers that are going around terrorizing and killing? And just a Palestinian who was a U.S.-born American citizen, 20-year-old, was just killed, two days ago. This is, since October 7th, we've had over 1,100 settler attacks into Palestinian communities. And these are people are armed. So where is the calls for expelling these people? Where's the calls for bombing their settlements? Where's the calls for going after their leaders and mass arresting them or even expelling them to New York or wherever the hell they come from? So if you want to be fair, if you want to be just and say that, let's go and do this with Hamas and the people of Gaza, then apply it to yourself. And I'll say, okay, all fine. But you're not doing that. You can never do that.
What tends to happen is whenever you bring anything up from the Israeli side, they explain to you how these people are marginal and have no power and have no influence and they're not important. But then anybody who sort of vaguely is related to Hamas says something, and that means that this is exactly what the entire organization wants.
What I'm saying is, but this goes in lines like
Guys, real quick, I'm going to shut down the stream. So for those watching this live right now, if you want to continue the conversation, you got to come on Discord. You can find a link in the description or on my bio on Twitter. And I imagine this conversation will continue for many more hours.